Okay, I'm here at the playground here at a local park, and there's rules on the playground. The rules are have fun and be as loud as you possibly can, right? Those are the rules. But I was thinking about something. I wanted to ask you a question. Would you consider yourself a rule follower? Or are you a person who makes their own rules? If you're not sure, you can probably just look to the person to your right or to your left. They can help you out and figure it. But I wanted to give you a little test, just in case you didn't know, so that you could figure out if you're a person that's a rule follower or a person who says, you know what, I'm going to make my own rules. All right, so you ready? I've got 5 questions. If you answer that you're a rule follower, you're going to raise your right hand. And if you answer that you're a person that makes your own rules, you're going to raise your left hand. All right, so you ready? Here we go. Question number 1. When it comes to the speed limit, are you a person who says, that it's called a speed limit for a reason? And so I'm only going to drive up to that threshold or below. If that's you, go ahead and raise your hand. You're a rule follower. All right. Thanks for being honest. And please make sure that you don't get in front of me on the road. If you're a person who says, you know what, listen, I'm going to make sure I slow down under bridges and overpasses. That's where the police officers like to have their radar gun. But other than that, I'm going to make sure that I keep up with the flow of traffic. If that's 5 or 10 miles over, that's not such a big deal. Just go ahead and raise your left hand. You make your own rules. All right, thank you for being honest, and our police officers will greet you after the services on Sunday, okay? All right, here we go. So you get the picture. It's rule follower or make your own rules. You ready? Number 2. You go into the fridge, you open up the door, you grab the milk out, and you see the expiration day. You missed it by 1 day. The milk expired yesterday. Are you a person that says, you know what, it expired yesterday, I don't want to take the risk, it's probably not worth it, I'm going to go ahead and pour that out and I'll go to the store and get some new milk today? If that's you, raise your hand. Rule followers. Okay, if you're a person who says, I'm going to sniff it, as long as it smells good, it's probably fine. I may make sure that my kids drink it first, just to make sure that they don't get sick, but then I'll drink some. If that's you, go ahead, make your own rules, all right? There we go. Number 3, what about oil changes? If you're a person who has that little sticker, up in the upper corner of your windshield, and it has a mileage, and it says you've got to have your oil changed by this exact mileage date. And you make sure you've got it written down in your little mileage notebook in your glove compartment of your car. And you make sure every 3,000 miles, car is serviced with an oil change. If that's you, rule followers, go ahead and raise your hand. Awesome. All right, if you're a person who says, I know my ride, I know my vehicle, listen, it's not making any noises, it's still running really well. I checked the oil a little while back and it still looked good, so I'm going to go 5,000-6,000 miles. Doesn't matter. If that's you, go ahead, make your own rules person. Okay, good. All right, what about this when it comes to parenting? If you're a person who says, you know what, I've got to make sure that everything is completely sterilized for my kids. I would hate for them to get sick. So I got to sterilize their binky, their bottles, like whatever it is, I got to make sure it's all sterilized. If that's you, go ahead, raise your right hand. Okay, rule followers. All right, if you're a person who says, you know what, I may throw it in the dishwasher, I may run it underneath the sink, or you know what, I've even been known if the passy falls on the floor just to pick it up and just, take a little, make sure I clean it off, then give it to the kid. If that's you, go ahead, raise your hand. All right, you're a make your own rules kind of a person. Okay, last one, you ready? You want to make some home improvements, and so you've got your project ready to go. Where's your first stop? If your first stop is at the planning and zoning department of your town to make sure that your project is permitted and you have all the right paperwork, go ahead and raise your right hand. You're a rule follower. All right, good. And then if your first stop is Lowe's, because you want to make sure you go ahead and get your list of stuff, you get all your supplies, and then you're headed back to do the project. You don't have time to stop at no stinking zoning office. Forget that. Then go ahead and raise your left hand if that's you. All right, good. Okay, so you're a make your own rules kind of person. All right, so I want you to tally those up. There are 5 questions. If you had 3 or more where you said, yes, I'm a rule follower, then congratulations, you're an uber rule follower. If you had 3 or more questions that you said, I'm a make my own rules kind of person, then congratulations, you are a rebel with a cause. But the truth of the matter is, Paul in Romans chapter 2 tells us that we all like to make our own rules. We all like to be God over our own lives. Paul's just wrapped up the first part of Romans chapter 2, and he says, listen, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a Jew or a Gentile, there's one great uniter in life, and that's death and the judgment that follows. Paul says, listen, you can be ready to face the judgment But it's not because of your history or how religious you are or how much you know. The one thing that makes you ready to face the judgment is what you've done with Jesus. He says it's not based on how much you know of the Old Testament law, because Jewish folks, the Old Testament law was to make you aware of your need for a perfect Savior. There's no way you could ever keep the law perfectly. Gentile folks, that's the reason God's given you a conscience. It's to show you that, you know what, there's right and there's wrong. You can never be perfect in and of your own self. That's why you need a perfect Savior. And so he says, when there's one unifier that makes you ready to stand in judgment, the last day, and that's what you've done with Jesus. He says you're either standing on your own merits, and whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, you're never going to be ready to face the judgment if you're standing on your own merits. Or you're a person who has received Jesus' free gift of salvation. You've accepted him as your substitute because he was perfect, and he's granted to you his righteousness because he was your substitute. And then if you've done that, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or a Gentile, rich or poor, a rule follower or a make your own rules kind of a person, then you're ready to stand because of what Jesus has done on your behalf. Well, today, if you'd like to go a little deeper to find out more about what Paul was talking about in Romans chapter 2, verses 12 through 29, you can just click the link below in the description of the video. You'll see a PDF that's a discussion guide. You can get together with your family, maybe some friends or some coworkers if you want to start a Bible study. If you're in a community group through Christ Community Church, this is your opportunity to be able to discuss and dig a little deeper with what God has to say. But remember today what Paul's message was for Romans chapter 2. It doesn't matter how religious you are, what your background is, whether you're a rule follower or make your own rules. The only thing that makes you ready to stand on Judgment Day is what you've done with Jesus and whether you've recognized your need for a perfect Savior. Hope you have some great discussion in your groups.